Hello and welcome to this video. Today we have the great privilege to have Jason Mak onto the channel to talk about his experience studying music at St. Peter's College, Oxford. Jason Mak, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I just had like 2 tutorials this afternoon, so I might feel a bit tired. But yeah, overall I had quite a productive day, yeah.
Brilliant. That is what we want to hear. I mean, it is tiring. The Oxford life is tough, and we will be talking to Jason about life at Oxford in a bit. But today we're going to talk about how you got into Oxford. So perhaps to get started off, can you tell us a bit more about yourself? What subjects did you do in high school? Where did you study in high school? And what's the background to you applying to Oxford?
Yes, okay. So contrary to Joshua, I actually studied in a local school in Hong Kong, and I grew up in Hong Kong before I came to Oxford. I attended the LaSalle College, and yeah, it's like one of the like state schools in Hong Kong, and we do the HKDSC diploma, which many of you might not be familiar with it, but it's like the A levels of Hong Kong. It's like you also do a set of subjects that is prepared you for university entrance. And so in the diploma, I did like all the students are forced to do like 4 compulsory subjects in their Chinese, English, liberal studies, and mathematics, and they serve as like the foundation of our academic journey. And like on top of it, in my electives, I did quite a STEM oriented based elective back in high school. I did physics, chemistry, accounting, for the maths and statistics, and of course I also did music as one of my electives. So yes, I did 5 electives in total, and they function a bit similar to the A level system, and you study it for like 3 years in Hong Kong instead of 2 years, and that's the major difference. And it's meant to provide you enough depth for the study in higher education. And yeah, that's my education background prior coming to Oxford.
That's quite interesting how your subjects were mainly STEM related instead of humanities, with music being such a humanities focused course.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could tell us a bit more about what got you interested in music. How did you discover your passion in music, and how did that perhaps tie into your choice of extracurriculars and some ECAs that you've done on the side as well?
Yes, so I'm always already quite like passionate into the practical side of music since I was like 6 years old, maybe, because like I started to play the piano and also took some violin lessons back when I was a child, which is like a very East Asian thing to do. I must say, it's just parents taking their children to instrumental lessons. And
Yes, I can remember how I
yeah,
did piano lesson as well as a kid for like 5 years, and also cello lessons. And
yes,
while I didn't pursue it as strongly as Jason here, the organ scholar, but no, it is something that we've all had that experience of doing some music at the same time.
yeah, I'm sure like more than 90% of East Asians at some point have played some instruments before, and so I'm always quite interested in the practical side of music. I've been joining like choirs, and I've also been since I was in primary school, and also like I quite like piano playing. But I wasn't actually like I never really thought of like a career or like further study in music before in high school. And what's like really and like why did the also degree in music really caught me is that first of all, like in high school, as I've mentioned, I've been mostly studying the STEM subjects. But it was also at the same time that I realized that I'm really not that into studying STEM. It's that I'm quite good at it, but I didn't really want to do it further in university. So that's it already helped me to eliminate a lot of subject choices in university. And because like as I said in the DSC curriculum, we also actually do some compulsory subjects, and for example like liberal studies and English and Chinese, which is like all quite lots of humanities based. For example, like we delve in the history, the philosophy of like Chinese and English, and also in the liberal studies like a politics course. And so I found that I'm the humanities drew more closer for me. And so why did I decide to pursue a music degree in higher education? It's actually quite an interesting choice. So I didn't choose to pursue in a conservatory because the Royal Academy of Music or Royal College of Music is because I'm first of all I'm not that certain to a career in like performance or in practical music, and I'm very sure that I still wanted to do a bit more academics before, even if I decide to become a performer in the future. And I feel like the academic degrees in music provide quite a really good foundation for it. It's that it provides you academic training through like we call it musicology, which is like the academic study of music, and it actually covers quite a wide range of disciplines. Like, for example, like the music degree in Ossety, it covers like basically like for foundation, it covers the history of music, the philosophy of music. Actually, is quite an interesting topic, and also the politics and sociology related to music in both in history and both in the modern world, and it also touches a bit of STEM, for example, like the psychology of music and also like the biological evolution of music, these kinds of topic. And it's just a really very diverse degree. And on top of the academic stuff, I feel like also there's also a place of a very vibrant music and cultural context in the sense that there's many opportunities and many ensembles and many performance opportunities for you to pursue music. And the fact in here, they also like provide very generous funding for instrumental lessons or like even composition lessons. And so it's like it actually allows you to study the practical side of music to a high standard as well, on top of having the privilege to engage in the studying of music and humanities.
So we'll get into talking a bit more about that aspect of studying music at Oxford in our next interview about what life is like at Oxford. And I'm sure you've opened the can a bit, but I don't want to open it too much so people actually still watch the next interview, you know. So perhaps drawing us a bit back into the application process right there, let us think a bit about what are some of the extracurricular activities that you've done which are related to music. So how did you, in your personal statement or in your interview, demonstrate to the examiner some of the things or your interest in music? So what were some of the extracurricular activities related to music that you've done?
Yes, it's a very interesting question. I think that music is particularly different to other subjects because it's like deeply related into extracurriculars. For example, like very big point is like performance. It's like so like performance is not a necessary extracurricular for the music curriculum in here, but like from my understanding, it's like I'm pretty certain that most of us music students in here have quite a strong interest in different practical sides of music, and that's a really good point to put on your personal statement. For example, like what ensembles or what orchestra that have you played in, or like what grade have you achieved in certain instrument or voice, or what competitions did you join before in high school, and these are all very like useful extracurriculars. And I think like on the other hand, besides the more like closely related to music stuff, it's also really good to demonstrate that you have also like other interests as well, because like as I've said, the music degree in here is very diverse, and you just won't get to pass even if you're like really good at performance, but you're not really interested in the academic side of it. And I remember in my personal statement, because like back in high school I also did lots of STEM, and like one of my most vibrant experiences back in high school is that I joined the competitions called like the STEM plus entrepreneurship competition hosted by the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology and also the Hong Kong Science Technology Park. And I actually luckily I actually won the champion of it, and of course it's a very good thing to put on my personal statement. And so I think it's really important to like have a good balance on the extracurriculars that you put on a personal statement. It's I think a diverse of that demonstrates that you have a huge interest in music, but also shows that you're a very interesting type of student. And there's also a dilemma to put on a personal statement because it's from my understanding, it's only 500 words, or how many words is allowed in?
It's limited to 4,000 characters, so you kind of
4,000 characters.
So you think about it's kind of one page of A4 paper, about that ish. So you do have to be very concise with your wording.
Yes, because I remember it's like a very like congested essay that I wrote. Because like to apply for Oxford at the same time, you also have to demonstrate that you have a very strong academic interest in the subject. So like the extracurriculars, it's like as I remember, you could only have like one paragraph fitted in. So in my opinion, it's like to put your top musical qualifications and competitions perhaps, and also do like one or two like extracurriculars other than music. It's that's my recommended type of.
Do you think that those extracurriculars apart from music is especially important for applying to music? And the reason why I say this is because like unlike other subjects that you're applying to, so if you're thinking about like STEM or like or maths or physics, you could do like physics or math related extracurriculars. However, in my experience, like even me who is not even studying music, I have like I have quite a high grade in cello. I was the principal cellist of the orchestra. I was the principal actually of a few orchestras back in high school. I did a lot of performances as well. So and there's also good friends who study like philosophy and math at Harvard, and they do like diploma in music as well. So it's just one of those things where I'm thinking about do you think for music being such a universal thing where people who are not even applying to music could be so like reputable in the music field, do you think it's even more important for music students to try to show off their skills in areas apart from music alone and show them off in other kind of areas, like as you said, STEM for entrepreneurships or other societies? Do you think that's important as well?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. I think it's instead of like more showing off your achievements and many different what you achieve, I think more important is that it shows that it's like it shows your character, in my opinion. It's like by, for example, like by saying that you have by like indulging in different subjects, it might show that you're a very curious person, for example. Like by showing that you did a lot of like sports as well, it might show that you have good time management or like good so good determination. And I think it's like more of a matter of like what kind of character do you think you are, and like how are you going to demonstrate that in your personal statements by mentioning your extracurriculars. And also like to add the point that I didn't actually like for the musical side, it's I think like it's like if you didn't have like as vibrant or as like or high achievement music performance, or let's say composition or different kinds of it doesn't really matter much, but I think it's that you need to show that you have a genuine passion in music. And is that like even if you're not that good of a performer, it actually doesn't really matter to the academics in here. But I think it's the extracurricular part is to first to show your character and is to further solidify your interest in the academic subjects, which in music it's yes, so it's a quite a tricky thing to do.
So I think that's a very interesting thing. And of course, when you're thinking about someone might be applying to music and they're thinking about like, okay, I have to do some music related extracurriculars. The most obvious ones is doing your diplomas, doing your grades, doing a performance at orchestras, trying to get that performance side of things up as well.
Yeah.
But are there, and this is one question which it goes out to you and I ask everyone else, is like, what are other activities that might not be so on the beaten track, but a bit more kind of niched or kind of surprising activities that you could also do related to music that you might know other people who have done, so that people at home who might not be able to perform or might not be able to join orchestras due to perhaps a lack of resource or different schooling opportunities, what are some other things related to music that you might have met someone who's come up with something where like, actually, that's a very interesting extracurricular activity that I've never thought of before, but actually is very important or can be done as an opportunity? What are some options like that?
Yes, so okay, so actually like I've met some friends that like they didn't do that much like music stuff in high school because like they're like more of an humanities person. But I remember like for example, I have some friends who have done some essay writing competitions. I think that applies to like nearly like many humanities subjects, and also that is a good extracurricular. And also I think like debating, it's a really good extracurricular as well. It's like I mean like not only putting on your personal statement, but like I feel like participating in debating it, like it trains your humanities, like your thinking and your logic in many sense, and it's like a really good preparation on, let's say, the interviews and for the academic work in institutes. It really shapes your mind of thinking and really helps you to articulate how are you going to support an argument or to raise a point. So I think it's so for my advice is like for music is like, of course, if you're already a like seasoned performer, of course that's very good. And on top of it, I also think that you have to be very curious about many different stuff, and is to also train yourself to be more articulate in many senses. It's a really boost. It gives a really big boost in your application, like in like your interviews or in your written essays when you have to hand in to apply to the music course and also the many other universities in the UK.
That seems like a very important thing. Now that we've touched a bit on your application, let's talk a bit more about your specific experience, because I think that's what a lot of people watching this interview will be interested in. What did a successful Oxford applicant do in their personal statement which worked for them? So perhaps let's start off with asking you what I ask everyone is, what are 5 things in your application, your personal statement or your interview, which you think, or your portfolio in general, which you think helped you get into Oxford?
Okay, yeah, so I think it's really a combination of different stuff. It's that so to further delve into the question, so I think I need to elaborate a bit more on the, let's say, the selection process first. So to apply for music, it's that like we don't really have an admission test like many other subjects, but we have it's like you're required to submit a performance video of you. It's like a so like the performance video, first of all, it's I think it could be a bonus if you're really good at performance, but it's not particularly important if you're not really good at it, because it's actually quite a interesting point. But like in the Oxford music degree, you could actually complete the degree without doing any sort of performance. So it's like the tutors are actually more interested in your academic potential, in your curiosity, in the academic study of music. And but of course, I'm not saying that the performance could not be a bonus. I think it actually helped me. It's like one of the reasons to help me to get into music course and also and yes, and I would like explain it a bit more later. And so, like on top of doing the performance video, you're also required to submit 2 written essays as part of the like written book that they would judge. For example, like they would judge how are you going to articulate your arguments, and it's like how are you suited to the humanities degree, and also then would you really struggle in also too. And so I think the written essays are also very important. And
just a quick question on the written work. I had to do a written work for philosophy as well.
Okay.
I was wondering whether there was any specific kind of topics or themes that they recommend you to write about. Do they suggest that the written work is on music, or could you submit like a written work on history or philosophy or some other degree? Is there any like music specific requirement for that?
Well, yes, there's not really a requirement, but there's like they generally like suggest people to hand in 1 essay related to music and 1 essay on like another topic, because like they want to see like your interest in other subjects or other disciplines as well. So yeah, that's also my recommendation, and that's also what I did, because I feel like they did this for reasons that like for example, like they wanted to test like, did you really do any academic music in high school? Do you really have a genuine interest in music? And also like they also wanted to test you in, let's say like are you curious to like expand your horizons outside of music? Because like music is a very interdisciplinary discipline, and I think that it's really important to have a like good grasp or have a curious like mindset towards different, for example, like philosophy, theology, or psychology, different stuff. It's all deeply intertwined with music, and that's my recommendation. And I think like the topic and the essays aren't really that important, but it's also, I think the most important part is to demonstrate that you could really articulate or to really structure arguments in a very logical sense, which is very important in like the humanities degree or in like any form of study essay writing. And because like the essay writing is actually a huge part of like humanities degree in Austria, and I'm sure Joshua would agree to it as well. And so like for music in my second year, we have to write 2 essays a week. So if you have like a bad essay writing foundation, or if you struggle with reading and writing generally, you're going to have a really hard time in here. So I think the written work is for them to judge would you really succeed in the environment in Austria.
Yes, that's a very important part. And I think we would also talk a bit more about kind of the specific things that people are looking for in a bit when we're talking about personal statements and interviews in particular. But I do think you've raised a fantastic point about how when they're judging, and this is one thing that Oxford really separates from a lot of other universities, that instead of looking for the knowledge exactly, they're looking for the way in which you think about the knowledge. Because one thing which, I mean, I talk to tutors, and tutors make it very clear in interviews and also in these things, that they're not expecting you to know everything. They're expecting you to be able to accept information, learn that information, and then think about it and use it and apply it in a critical way. So that's something which is very important for for the Oxford application process and is something which is important for your written work. So even if your written work, perhaps one of them is about music, or one's about your topic of interest, like for me, it was about philosophy, you also want to demonstrate not only that you know things well, but also that you can really reason critically. And that's a very important thing. So apart from the written work and your application, the performance, what were some other things in your application which you think really helped you get into Oxford?
Yes, and I think like out of all these stuff, it's like the most important part of the selection process is actually the interview part. And I'm sure that Joshua might have mentioned it in other interviews as well. And so it's like after you submitted your written book and your performance video, it's that then they will decide to whether to call you up for interview. And for music, they actually like call a lot of people, like most of the applicants up for interview, like once they reach the predicted grades. Yes, and like, of course, grades is an important part as well. But like it's like once you pass the threshold, it's not that important. But it's like the other aspects of your application that makes you stand out from other students. Because like I'm sure that most of the applicants were like very similar grades and they're all high achieving students in their school, and so it's like it doesn't make you stand out. And so for the interview, it's like my tutors have told us as well. It's like the interview is actually the major selection process in deciding whether you get an offer in the music degree. And also then, as I've said, like there are many things that you can do, and it's like wide reading is very important. Like no matter in music or like in outside music as well, because I think that it's like being well read and having a wider knowledge, it helps you to construct your arguments and to make you a more articulate interlocutor in many sense. And it's like participating in this stuff like debates, or it's like participating in like conversations, and to like watch more, let's say, dialogues between like experts are really good preparation for the interviews. And it's like, so what happens? Yeah, you want me to elaborate on what happens in the interview now?
So we'll talk a bit more about what happens in the interview later on, but perhaps is there anything else which you think really helps set you apart from other applicants, or do you think those three main aspects are perhaps the big things which stand out to you? Is there anything else you want to add in general before we move on?
Okay, yes, so I think yes, other than the interview, the personal statement, and like the written book and these kind of stuff, I think it's I'm not sure about other subjects, but for the awesome music degree in here, I think it's also about some like do you like have a unique story, or like to present that on like why is like on your musical journey, on like first of all it's like actually it's like more about a character and your personal story. I think it's talking about like how are you interested, like how and why did you shape your passion and interest in music, and it's like to demonstrate that and like why you could flourish in the music department here. And I think it's a combination of the different aspects that you hand in the tutors, they like from their experience. And yes, and I think they could yes, they're looking for these kind of stuff as well. And yeah, that's my main
That's a very important point that you raise, and I think presenting and demonstrating your passion is such an important part of your application, because you can teach a student with passion, a non-knowledgeable student with passion, but it's very difficult to teach us, even if the student is very knowledgeable, if they don't care about the subject, you're not going to get into the university, because the teacher is not going to care about it, or feel that they can't teach well, and the teachers want students who are willing to learn. Now, if you're understanding, if you don't know how to find your passion, or you do know how to find your passion, but don't know how to apply it to your application, apart from providing these interviews at Logos Education, I've also published 2 books, the UCAS Bible and the US College Guide, for UK applications and US applications. So if you're interested in applying to universities in the UK or the US, go check these books out. They contain all the information that you need to provide a systematic structuring of your application, your portfolio, the building of your portfolio, to the personal statements and the application process. So if you want to do well in your applications and don't know where to start, these 2 books are very good places to start. Links to them will be in the description below. You can access them either with PDF, on Kindle, or at paperback on Amazon. It's accessible in all formats, depending on how you like to digest information. So make sure you go check out the UCAS Bible and the US College Guide. for more information there. So Jason, let's carry on with our interview and continue talking a bit more about the application and really get into the depths of the UK application process, because I want to push you on that, and I'm sure that a lot of students here who are listening to this want, now that they have the opportunity to talk to a student at Oxford, to really understand what was the hardest part of the application and how did you overcome it, because I'm sure everyone will find something a bit different or something a bit more difficult than others. So what were some things which you found particularly difficult, and what were some ways in which you overcame that challenge?
Okay. So what's the hardest part for me? It's a really quite a nuanced question. I think it's like as I've mentioned in the beginning of the interview, it's like my background, perhaps a bit, because I grew up in a local school and I grew up in a completely different education context compared to like the, let's say, the British applicants or any other like foreign applicants. And so I think the biggest challenge for me is that, because like even like if I did music in the HKDSC diploma, it's still quite a very like different, still quite a very different curriculum to what they do in A levels in the UK here. And so I think one of the biggest challenges is that it's actually not it's like I think that many people would say the interviews, but for me it's actually the preparation for like my personal statements and interviews. Like because I have to do a lot of like wide reading, and I'm exposed to a lot of unfamiliar concepts that are like completely out of syllabus in what I'm doing in Hong Kong. And so I think these are like as a student, as an international student actually, that didn't grow up in the education system in the UK, I think it's like there's like a lot of there's like a lot of difference between the content that you learn and the environment that you grew up. For example, like in a local school in Hong Kong, it's actually a fair difference to what you might imagine in an international school or in a like let's say a grammar school or a private school in the UK. It's actually like a very like academic oriented, and it's not like trained you in the sense that what Oxford wants. It's actually because like I would say that also they actually look for students who are like very curious. Like I've been given mentioned this because it's really very important, and also have the ability to like think logically and to articulate themselves. But in the education system in Hong Kong, it's very much exam orientated, and it's very more like textbook based. And to like get away from this kind of mindset is a very big leap for me at the moment at that time, because it's like so I'm luckily I have the advice of I've gained some advice on a website called the Student Room, which is like a free website that people discuss about, let's say UCAS applications or A levels or GCSEs, kind of stuff, like academic related matters. And I'm lucky to gain some insights from a music students at that time, and he really advised me to really like do a lot of wide reading and to think critically about many different stuff. It can be very simple. It's not only like think critically about your reading, but like think about what's happening around you, or like the different politics or the different like stuff happening around you. It's a really good thing of training how do you think, and it's to it's to like develop a curious mindset and also to develop a logical mindset. And it's also like to get away from the mindset that is like studying the textbook is like the best way to learn. Like I'm not denying that it's a bad way, but for like especially for humanities degrees, I think it's more important to think about what the textbook is saying. It's like, do I really agree with it, or what does it really imply, or like does it contradict with any other scholars? I think these are like very important mindset to have when engaging with tests and to engage with your preparation for your application to Oxford. And it's not just about reciting facts and to like equip yourself with the knowledge in the books. It's about some training or the thinking. Yeah, that's the hardest part for me, is to get away from the education system that I've been accustomed to since I was in primary school, which is like when I was 6, perhaps. Yeah.
So you raise an interesting point about an international student applying to the UK. Everyone has different backgrounds, and some people who are watching this might be applying from, I don't know, France or India or wherever it is, different countries around the world. Apart from saying, okay, let's read more wider resources, what are some other things which you can do to, number one, figure out what Oxford is looking for, and number two, figure out how you can adapt to it? Or do you think that wider reading is really the only solution to that problem?
Okay. Just so my first advice is a very basic one, and I think it's definitely to look at your course curriculum. Is that because I feel like if you want to enjoy your time and also do even if you want to do good in your preparation to apply to also, I think you need to have a clear understanding of what the course you're doing. And like in the context of music, and it's like by looking at the topics that they're doing, I think it gives you a really good grasp of understanding of like what the degree is going to be like and what knowledge or what kind of skills are they looking at. And same music, they're actually looking for quite a diverse skills. It's like the topics range from history of music, and it range. I've mentioned this earlier before. It's a wide range of humanities topics and also a bit of music theory and perhaps a bit of performance if that's your thing. And but I like grasping the curriculum in your course and in music. I think it gives you a good direction on like what you should prepare for, or like would you really enjoy the degree? Because the interviews and also like the materials that they provide you, the pre-reading materials that they provide you more exactly. It's actually quite related to the curriculum, especially the first year curriculum in here, and so it's a good idea to like look at the curriculum to limit on like what aspects of knowledge you should focus on a bit more. And and I also know that many faculties they actually provide reading lists for applicants. I think that's the case for philosophy and theology. So did they provide them a reading list for applicants before?
Yes, there was an app reading list that they had some suggested books. You find a few different collations on the internet, and
Yeah.
they are quite helpful. So I'm sure.
Yes, they really
that could
helpful.
be a
So
good-
yeah, so like yeah, so wide reading is important, but it's also really important to like narrow down on what knowledge or what books do you have to like really get a good understanding of before coming to the selection process. I think that's really important, and I think other than wide reading, and it's actually yeah, like my main advice just to like think more critically about many different stuff and many different subjects that you're doing. For example, like, if you're doing history, and maybe you should like think a bit more on like what are the consequences of different events instead of just studying like the theories and the facts that the books provided. It's a question of whether could you like expand on different points, or is your ability to learn and to think and to engage in like meaningful debates. So I think these are my main suggestions for preparing for the selection process.
So perhaps let us be a bit more precise and now talk a bit about the personal statement and the interview. Let's start off with the personal statement. What are some things which are helpful for a music personal statement in particular? What are some things which you should structure, or how should you present your ideas in a personal statement when someone is applying to study music at Oxford?
Okay. Yes, so I think for the personal statement, it's other than showing your character that we've mentioned just now, I think for also degrees, nearly all I think all the degrees in here is like it requires that you have you need to show that you have a genuine not only interest but also a knowledge of your subject. So I think in terms of how do you structure your personal statement in music, I think first of all, like after you perhaps introduce yourself and mentioning about your extracurriculars at near the end of your statement, I think it's more important on it's like showing like what kind of reading or which aspects of music academic musicology that you're interested in. So for example, in my essay, so after I've briefly um like wrote about my background, and then I've started to really delve into the really academic and technical points of music. For example, I've mentioned that I've been really interested in this sociology and the psychology of music, and afterwards I've mentioned on the readings that I did a book called Music in Everyday Life by Thierry de Nora. It's quite a famous book that is about the sociology of music that I'm sure that many people who are interested in music have read it at some point as well. And I've really like delved into like on like whether do I agree with the author, or like how does the stuff that the author said relate to me, or do I have any like personal experiences that coincide with the theories that the author written. It's actually is a very like you should focus a lot more on the academic substance, on the personal statements, and it's because it shows that you have a good critical thinking, and I think it also shows that you really know that you have a genuine interest and you really wanted to pursue musicology in university, because like there's a problem that, for example, like many people could be interested in the practical side of music, but they're not that into the academic study of music, and that's a big problem for the tutors. And also too, because the degree is actually very heavily focused on your your musicology, and it's like you struggle a lot in degree if you didn't really have a genuine interest or have a good foundation of what the degree is going to be like. So I think the personal statement, yeah, you should really focus um on on your thoughts and on your your reading that you've done.
So apart from the wider reading and kind of getting a broader knowledge of the topic for your personal statement, let's turn to the interview, because I guess in some sense there is a predictable element of the interview,
Yes.
in the sense that they might ask you about your personal statement, because otherwise what else would they ask you about? But there's also an unpredictable element of the interview. What are some things? Of course, going into an interview, you should really know your stuff, know your own portfolio, you know your own personal statement very well.
Okay.
But what are some other things you can do when you're entering that music Oxford interview, which would be helpful for someone who's applying?
Okay, yeah, so I think to start with this question, I should give a bit more about the structure of the interview first. So it's like other 3 interviews, and they all are quite in a similar structure. It's like they'll give you like 2 pieces of pre-reading before the interview. So one piece would be an essay. It's like they're usually like a few pages long, like not particularly long, because you only have like I would say only 15 minutes to read it before entering the interview. And the other piece of the pre-interview material is like a musical score, which they will actually ask you like about like how would you analyze the piece of music, or ask you some really technical questions about that piece of music. So like based on this, I think they're like there's a very basic stuff that you could do, is that first of all is to like really get sure that you're quite familiar with the music theory that you're doing in A levels or in or whatever curriculum that you're doing, because I think the tutors, like, they're not expecting you to know everything before you come to the interview, but they expect you to be doing academic music in school already and to have a good foundation of music theory and, for example, the different chord types and something very similar in music, let's say different cadences. And so it's like the music theory that you do in A level. So it's really important that you really know the technical stuff about it, because it's like, yes, so like getting things wrong is not particularly important in the interview, but I think that if you couldn't even really, let's say, have a really good grasp of the material in high school, it didn't really demonstrate that you have a high potential for learning, or it didn't demonstrate that you have a genuine passion and interest in your academic studies. So it's a really important point. And also to, yes, for so like the predictable elements, that there's like an essay that you're going to read beforehand, and the tutors would debate with you afterwards. Like after you give a summary of the essay, it's like they're mostly going to like bombard you with different questions that is definitely going to be very challenging. Actually, there's a joke that like if you find an Oxford interview not challenging, then you must be doing something wrong.
Yes.
I'm actually quite agree with it. Yeah, it's the tutors, the questions, they're like they aren't meant to be trick questions, but they're like they want to push you to see your potential. So they're like they could be very like challenging and really like pushing you on the edge at some points. And so in the interview, I think my suggestion is to always stay calm and to like articulate what you think. It's like you don't necessarily have to give a very like long and detailed answer, but I think it's very important that you vocalize on what's going on in your head. It's like if you stay silent, then I think staying silent is the worst option that you have.
Yes.
But yeah, it's like whatever you're thinking in your mind is to really articulate to it. And if you like got stuck at some point, you could tell them like what are you struggling with, or like why could you stop thinking. I think like avoiding silence is really important, but also like keep calm is really important. It's always good that perhaps, let's say, like I think that a few seconds silence is quite good. That if you need some time to think, but like don't really prolong the silence for too long, or because it shows that you might be really struggling, or you might be really like you have really difficulties in engaging in debates. So I think my advice is to stay calm, of course, and to vocalize everything in your head and also to articulate your points. And a very important point to try to relate it to your personal experience or different contexts. It's like you could like be the best debater in like everything, but if you don't have like any examples or an experience to back it up, I think what you said could be very superficial. And the two and so it's to my advice is also to contextualize many of your arguments and many of the points that you have made. You could like very simple link it to some musical experience that you personally had, or link it to some historical events, or link it to like any like event that you know that's happening. So yeah, that's my advice for it.
No, that's a brilliant presentation for how to prepare for an interview. I completely agree with the idea that it is so important to understand, know what you're talking about, and also think out loud. There's no problem in telling the tutor or trying to challenge the tutor in their assumptions or what arguments they've made, or trying to really deconstruct or really figure out what are they trying to ask you. Now, perhaps to end off this interview, and I ask this to everyone, and I'm sure the students applying to music would find this very interesting, is, well, if you had to go back in a time, what would be some information or 3 tips that you would give a student about how to apply to music? If you could go back to yourself before your application, what would you tell them? 3 things.
Yes, if I could go back to my time, it's a really interesting question. So, like, one thing that I really hoped is that my passion towards the humanities and musicology really grew at like a younger age, but like that's not really an advice, because I think that people will discover their passion eventually, and you just can't force it. Or because my passion for the humanities and like academic study of music is actually comes across with my experiences in high school and my and like different stuff that I discovered. So that's not really that's something that I hoped, but like not really an advice. And I would say my main advice to first of all is to like study harder. My opinions are very basic advice. I'm actually quite a lazy student back in junior school, and I think that if I put a bit more work back when I was young, I could really be a like better student. Like no matter as a musician or no matter as a musicologist, I think I could really, I really hope that I'm less relaxed back in junior school and really put a bit more work. And I think it's a very basic advice that that's a really helpful as well. And I think my second advice for it is I've mentioned this many times, and if actually is actually like stay curious outside of the textbook. It's like, as I've mentioned, I grew up in an academic environment in Hong Kong that is actually very exam oriented and textbook based. And like growing up, I actually found that I actually like quite regretted it back in the days as well, because I'm back in junior school or primary school. I'm actually also like very disinterested in the knowledge outside of textbook, because I feel that like I shouldn't be spending time studying stuff that's not useful for my exams. But when I grew older, like I realized like exams are not really like my whole world. Because like as a student, it's always very easy to think that exams are my top priority, and it's like it defines my whole life, because it helps to get into, let's say, a good university or and like eventually a good job. But as I grew older, I realized that it doesn't really work like that. It's by having like being curious and learning a lot of different stuff, I think it actually like helps you to shape yourself to become a better person in terms of like many different aspects, like a better thinker, a better speaker, and also a better person like in making decisions. I think they're like many transferable skills that you can learn other than like just learning the stuff outside of the curriculum that you're doing in school. And I think it's a really important and thing to stay curious since a very young age, and I'm sure that it will be very helpful in the application and to like better yourself as well. And yes, and not only in the application, yes, and I think that like you shouldn't really let university application to define your life. And but of course, like it's a like huge milestone in your life, and it could like really have huge consequences in your life. So I think staying curious is a very useful advice in all walks of life, no matter for university applications or if you want to for self improvement or just for your like job in your future life. It's really important, and it's a really helpful advice. And my last piece of advice, it's because I'm doing a music degree, right? So I of course hope that I put more time in music as well, because in also here it's when I came here, like because in high school I'm always like a man, like one of the top performers in as a musician in high school. But like when I came to here, it's I feel like I'm humbled a lot, and it's like there are like many other like very very top musicians, and they're like there are also like many ensemble and orchestral opportunities in Austria, but they can be quite competitive in sometimes, and you could be missing out on some of them if you're not good enough, or you didn't like we have or you're not quick enough in learning music. So I think for applicants that who wants to do music in here, I think it's also to like spend more time on the practical side of it. It's like it shapes your understanding of music. I think that, for example, practicing your own instrument, it not only helps you to improve your musical skills, but it also helps you to shape your understanding and think of music, which is very important in both the application process and the studying of music in here. It's for example, you get a better grasp of music theory, and you get a better grasp of different philosophical topics. For example, like music embodiment, like how our body movements related with music, and these are all like important topics in Ossetia. So I really hope that I spent a lot more effort and like more time in also shaping myself to be a better musician. And it's yes, it will like yeah, it will help you to flourish more in the music scene and the degree in Ossetia. So these are my main three tips for both the application process and for successful study in Ossetia.
Yes, I think that's a very important presentation, and thank you very much once again for coming onto this channel. We really appreciate having you on talking about how you can apply to university. If you're interested in more questions about applying to music at the University of Oxford, let us know in the comments below. And if there's any other subjects that you want to learn about in applying to Oxford, let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to get more of these interviews for you as soon as possible. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want more interviews like this, then make sure to like and subscribe and sign up to our newsletter for weekly updates about key tips on how to get into your dream universities. You could sign up to our newsletter at our link, logoseducation.com. Link to that will be in the description below. Also, if you are trying to get started with your university applications and don't know where to start off with, check out our two books, the UCAS Bible and the US College Guide, are two very important books and very helpful books for your application. So you can check them out. Link with that to that will also be in the description below. Like always, stay safe, my friends. See you soon. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. I'll see you next video.